Hello, my name is Alex, and in this video I'll be talking about the evolution and history of character design in 3D animation. 3D animation didn't start as computer-generated images, but instead as clay animation, also known as claymation. This is the first type of 3D animation. It used physical models made out of clay to create stop-motion animation, such as Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep. This took a very long time, because for every movement that the models were made to do, the animator had to take a picture of it, and then later on compile the entire thing into a single sequence. This process could take up to days at a time, just for a small snippet of actual animation. CGI, or computer-generated imagery, is the use of computers to create images such as special effects and animation. The first fully computer-generated sequence in a feature film was in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. It showed a device called the Genesis device terraforming a planet. The company that created this computer animation was Lucasfilm's computer division, which was eventually purchased by Steve Jobs and renamed to Pixar. Then in 1995, they created the world's first fully computer animated feature film, known as Toy Story. One of the more recent advancements in 3D animation is motion capture, and one of the most famous uses is in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, and Andy Serkis's portrayal of Gollum using motion capture. This paved the way for more and more films to use motion capture, and even for Andy Serkis to co-found, along with film producer Jonathan Cavendish, a studio called The Imaginarium, a studio that focuses on motion capture technology and the advancements in the field. It may be strange to start off a section for how technology has improved with this by talking about an area which is very much lacking still in the 3D animation kind of world, which is the uncanny valley. Uncanny valley is when a simulation of a human, such as in video games and movies, looks almost completely human but hasn't reached the stage of being convincing. This creates an unsettling feeling for people. The graph shows, as something becomes more and more human-like, the audience reaction increases positively, but then there is a large dip in this positive reaction. This is the uncanny valley. Some examples of this in film is Beowulf, Polar Express, and the CGI Tintin film. A way around uncanny valley is to make the characters look less human, such as in James Cameron's Avatar. Some of the features are changed to make the characters look less human, but they still keep the realistic feel to them. Motion capture actually goes back before 3D animation, and the foundation of it goes back to 1915 and the development of rotoscoping by animator Max Fleischer. This required live-action film to be projected over a glass-top desk of an animator, and they had to trace over this film frame by frame. And then in 1939, Disney released the first feature film made using rotoscoping, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. As time has gone on and the technology has improved, we are now able to have programs watch and record the movement of actors. One famous example of motion capture is in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, in which the character of Gollum was made using motion capture. It was very basic motion capture, as it had Andy Serkis in a full white suit, which computers captured and the animators turned into what we know as Gollum. Using 3D in video games is very common, as more and more games tend to be 3D animated rather than 2D animated. This also gave rise to machinima, taking its name from machine and cinema. This is the process of using in-game assets to create a story and record it. A notable example is Rooster Teeth, who created Red vs. Blue, which now has 16 seasons and is still ongoing. The availability of 3D animation software has greatly increased over the years since the first Toy Story movie. This has allowed the public access to this type of animation through programs such as Blender, a free open source software that allows for a range of 3D techniques such as modeling, rigging, animation, rendering, compositing, and motion tracking. Dr. Stuart Sumida is a biology professor at California State University and has done incredible work for animation as an animal anatomy consultant for many different animation studios, with his first credit in The Lion King. He is one of the reasons that the computer-generated animals on the screen can look so lifelike. John Lasseter started his animation career at Disney, although after being fired from Disney, he then joined LucasArts, where he worked on the then new CGI software at the graphics group of the computer division, which was later purchased and renamed Pixar by Steve Jobs. There, John Lasseter directed Toy Story, Toy Story 2, A Bug's Life, Cars, and Cars 2. Andy Serkis is a very big name in the industry of motion capture, due to his work as Gollum from Lord of the Rings, Caesar in Planet of the Apes reboot, and Captain Haddock from The Adventures of Tintin, and co-founding a company that specializes in motion capture called the Imaginarium. Motion capture is the technique of recording real-life actions done by an actor. The actions are recorded by using a special suit with many different tracking points. These recorded actions are then transferred into a 3D animation program for animators to combine with a 3D model. Knowing how anatomy works is a key skill needed for animation, not just for 3D. Knowing how a creature should act helps make it seem more lifelike, no matter how different or weird the creature actually looks. Rigging is incredibly important to animating 3D characters, because without rigging, a character wouldn't be able to move. Rigging is done by creating joints, where the bone structure of the character would be. This allows the animator complete control of the limbs and joints of the character. What are the most important things to consider when rigging a 3D model?
Well, obviously you need to consider the scale of your character. So when you're matching the movement with the kind of the weight of the character and things like that, you need to make sure that the movement is timed appropriately. Small, thin, light characters can move quickly, big, heavy characters can move slowly, things like that. You also need to kind of keep in mind whether or not you're going to use motion capture, and if then you have to get your actor to keep the kind of character idea in their mind when they're doing that role.
Is it easier to rig and animate a humanoid character or one that is more animal-like? Why?
I guess it comes down to how like a human your character is. Is it an everyday human? Then you've got to be very accurate with your rigging and your animation. With kind of creatures and also and more into fantasy creatures, you can get away with a lot more because, of course, we don't know how those things move. So, for instance, Jurassic Park looks amazing because we don't actually have an idea about how a dinosaur moves, how it actually walks. So we can't say, oh my god, that looks rubbish compared to a real one. Humans, we see them every day, we know how people move, we know how they stand and things like that. So if you don't do that properly, it's very easy for us to pick out the errors.
What advantages do you think 3D animation has over 2D animation?
Well, 3D animation is obviously a lot more able to kind of carry across things like scale and you can place things in 3D space so that you can kind of calculate how they're kind of going to interact with each other over distances and things like that. 2D, it's all very much in the mind of the viewer. So if you're doing scale and things like that, then that kind of has to be worked out by the artists themselves, making sure they follow the kind of the rules of perspective, whereas 3D kind of does all that for you.
This has been the history and evolution of character animation in 3D. I hope you enjoyed.